Damaris Jones, commonly known as Mother Jones. The preamble to the IWW Constitution begins.
The working class and the employing class have nothing in common.
There can be no peace so long as hunger and want are found among the millions of working people.
And the few who make up the employing class have all the good things in life.
Between these classes, a struggle must go on until the workers of the world organize as a class.
Take possession of the means of production.
Abolish the wage system.
And live in harmony with the earth.
We women are the slaves of slaves. We are exploited more ruthlessly than men. Whenever wages are to be reduced, the capitalist class use women to reduce them. And if there is anything you men should do in the future, it is to organize the women.
She also advocated radical new tactics to win strikes, like the sit-in, which became so potent during the Great Depression.
My conception of the strike of the future is not to strike and go out and starve, but to strike and remain in and take possession of the necessary property of production.
Like her late husband, Lucy Parsons was a revolutionary socialist.
Now, what do we mean when we say revolutionary socialist? We mean that the land shall belong to the landless, that the tools to the toiler, that the products to the producers. I believe that if every man and every woman who works or toils in the mines and the mills and the workshops, the fields, the factories, and the farms of our broad America should decide in their minds that they shall have that which of right belongs to them, and that no idler shall live upon their toil, then there is no army that is large enough to overcome you, for you yourselves constitute the army.
Until her death in 1942, Lucy Parsons lived a life of continuing revolutionary struggle.
What is the revolution? Why, it is the very breath of life, the stupendous struggle for relief.
I labored to write my speech and had stubbornly resisted all attempts of my father and others to tell me what to say or to actually write it for me. Good or bad, I felt it had to be my own. I began to quake inwardly at the start, facing an adult audience for the first time, but they were sympathetic and I was soon sailing along serenely. When I concluded, I asked for questions, as I had heard other speakers do. None were forthcoming. The audience apparently sensed that I was nervous. How they laughed when I said resentfully, "Just because I'm young and a girl is no reason you shouldn't ask me questions." In August 1906, I was arrested with my father and several others for speaking without a permit and blocking traffic at 38th Street and Broadway, then the heart of the theatrical district. When the police officer ordered us to stop, we refused and the reserves were called. Our arrests followed. The charges were dropped, with the judge advising me to go back to school that fall and be a student a while longer before I become a teacher. The New York Times editorialized in a humorous, patronizing style about the ferocious socialist haranguer, Miss Flynn, who will graduate at school in 2 years, who tells us what to think, which is just what she thinks.
Elizabeth Gurley Flynn went on to be arrested at least 10 times in her lifetime. The denial of the Bill of Rights was always involved, usually in wobbly free speech fights. For instance, Spokane, Washington outlawed street meetings and arrested Flynn for breaking this law. The response was simple but effective. Wobblies descended on the town and forced the authorities to arrest over 500 of them until it became too expensive and they were released.
All charges dropped, the Bill of Rights defended.
Emma Goldman, orator, agitator, organizer, also waged free speech fights, often in alliance with the Wobblies. She was also jailed many times for inflammatory speeches and daring lectures given in English and her native Yiddish on topics ranging from anarchism and syndicalism to free love and homosexual rights. As an immigrant factory worker in Rochester, New York, she had been radicalized by the trial and hanging of the Haymarket martyrs. In the early 1890s, she also lived communally and ran an ice cream parlor in Worcester.
At the dances, I was one of the most untiring and gayest. One evening, a young boy took me aside with a grave face, as if he were about to announce the death of a dear comrade. He whispered to me that it did not behoove an agitator to dance. Certainly not with such reckless abandon, anyway. It was undignified for one who was on the way to become a force in the anarchist movement. My frivolity would only hurt the cause. I grew furious at his impudent interference. I told him to mind his own business. I was tired of having the cause constantly thrown in my face. I did not believe that a cause which stood for a beautiful ideal, for anarchism, for release and freedom from conventions and prejudice, should demand the denial of life and joy. I insisted that our cause could not expect me to become a nun, and that the movement should not be turned into a cloister. If it meant that, I did not want it.
As we come marching, marching, unnumbered women dead, go crying through our singing, their ancient cry for bread, art and love and beauty, their trusting spirits new. Yes, it is bread we fight for, but we fight for roses too. There once was a Union Maid who never was afraid of the goons and the gangs and the company fakes and the deputy sheriffs who made the rage. Went to the Union Hall when meeting was called, and when the company men come round, she always stood her ground. Oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union. Oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union till the day I die. This Union Maid was wise to the tricks of company spies. She couldn't be fooled by company stools. She always organized the guys. She always got her way. When she struck for better pay, she'd show her card to the National Guard, and this is what she'd say. Oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union. Oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union till the day I die. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Don't skip for the bosses, don't listen to their lies. We poor folk ain't got a chance unless we organize, yeah.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
But the banks are made of marble, with a guard at every door, and the vaults are stuffed with silver that the farmers sweated for. I see the weary miner scrubbing coal dust from his back. I heard his children crying, got no coal to heat the shack. But the banks are made of marble, with a guard at every door, and the vaults are stuffed with silver that the miners sweated for. I've seen good people
circuit throughout this mighty land. I prayed we'd get together and together make a stand. Then we own those ranks of marble with no guard at any door, and we share those vaults of silver that we have sweated for.
And a Soviet Union-led East reached deep into our domestic politics. Witch hunts of un-Americans equated dissent with disloyalty and infected all sectors of American life, including labor. When the House Committee on Un-American Activities, HUAC, targeted Paul Robeson, he noted the irony.
It is a sad and bitter commentary on the state of civil liberties in America that the very forces of reaction who have denied me access to the lecture podium, the concert hall, the opera house, and the dramatic stage now hail me before a committee of inquisition in order to hear what I have to say.
In 1953, HUAC called George Markham to testify. George Anarchy Markham moved to Northampton in the 1960s. He died at the age of 100 on October 25th, 2009. Before World War II, he had been a news reporter and editor and worked for his union, the Newspaper Guild in Boston. He also worked for the Congress of Industrial Organizations, the CIO, and he had served in the United States Navy. When George was hauled before HUAC, he was the New England Educational Director for the International Fur and Leather Workers Union.
Are you a member of the Communist Party?
I decline to answer. I decline to answer questions regarding my political beliefs and associations. I do not recognize the right of Congress to question me in this field. Under the First Amendment to the Constitution, I am protected in my exercise of free speech, freedom of assembly, and freedom of religion. Committees such as this are spreading fear and distrust in this great land of ours and intimidating people in their use of their rights under the First Amendment. In view of big business control of the government, the press, radio, and television, this fear by the people to speak out can destroy democracy and reduce unions to the status of company unions. I cannot, as a patriotic American, do anything to assist in this attack on the spirit and letter of the Constitution.
Do you want this committee to believe that you are not now a member of the Communist Party?
I do not believe that it is the province of this committee to inquire into that.
Regardless of whether it is your belief or not, will you answer the question?
Whether the committee here thinks one thing or another from responses I make to questions is...
Pardon me, do you mean that you do not care what your government thinks about your belonging to the Communist Party?
I do not think that was your question.
I'm putting it that way now.
Well, I have not been asked by my government what I think, and I do not think the government is going to ask me what I think.
You are being asked by your government now, sir. Will you answer the question?
I think that is purely, if I recall the question, purely an opinion.
Is that the only answer you can give?
I just do not care to discuss an opinion.
Do you not think the workers whom you represent are entitled to know whether you are a member of the Communist Party, which is part of a Kremlin conspiracy in this country?
If they want to know, they'll ask me.
Is that the only answer you're going to give to that question?
I think it is a good one.
What does a wave your hand and a shrug of your shoulders mean? Several times you have waved your hand rather contemptuously and shrugged your shoulders.
I do not think that you, a congressman who is a servant of myself and the rest of the people in the country, has any right to say that I am being contemptuous. Because I am not. I am aware that we live in a period of hysteria and reaction. happy hunting ground for paid spies and liars. I also know that my union has an unprecedented record of achievement. Such organizations are the ones which are first and most violently attacked. In light of all this, I must invoke my rights under the Fifth Amendment to prevent you from forcing me to make statements that can be used as a possible link in a chain of evidence to subject me to prosecution, even though my conscience is clear. And I feel my loyalty to this country runs as deep and as strong as any member of Congress.
This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to New York Island, from redwood forests to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me.
Founding Nueva Esperanza, a community development corporation. Greg later led the creation of the National Priorities Project, NPP. NPP makes complex federal budget information accessible so people can prioritize and influence how their tax dollars are spent.
Capital responded to the strike waves and organizing of the 1970s with a determination to break labor. The Reagan administration fired striking air traffic controllers and replaced them with scabs in 1981. Private companies followed suit. Strike breaking and union busting became commonplace again. In Westfield, 68 members of the United Auto Workers Local 430 struck the Sterling Radiator Plant in 1981 in what would have been a typical contract dispute, similar to their successful strike in 1973. But owner John Reed hired scabs. In a dramatic act of civil disobedience, 91 union and community supporters were arrested for blockading a bus delivering strike breakers to the plant.
The Sterling Radiator strike gave us a prophetic song, Trying to Break My Union, by Western Mass labor troubadour Tom Jurovich.
Now they're trying to break my union. They're trying to bust my life. Take all that I've worked for from my kids and my wife. I was just getting where things were starting to go my way. Now these high-priced lawyers and these lousy scabs try to take my job away.
Down of the steeple, by the relief office, I'd seen my people as they stood there hungry. I stood there asking, is this land made for you and me?
She wrote,
I am on aid to families with dependent children, and both my children are in school. I have graduated from college with distinction, 128th in a class of over 1,000, with a BA in English and sociology. I have experience in library work, childcare, social work, and counseling. The employment office has nothing for me. I go every week to the library to scour the newspaper help wanted ads. I have kept a copy of every cover letter that I have sent out with my resume. The stack is inches thick. I work part-time in a library for $3.50 an hour. Welfare reduces my allotment to compensate. We have employment offices that can't employ, governments that can't govern, and an economic system that can't produce jobs for people ready to work. Last week, I sold my bed to pay for the insurance on my car, which in the absence of mass transportation, I need in order to go job hunting. Now I sleep on a piece of foam rubber somebody gave me. So this is the great American dream my parents came to this country for. Work hard, get a good education, follow the rules, and you will be rich. I don't want to be rich. I just want to be able to feed my children and live with some semblance of dignity.
As I went walking, I saw a sign there, and on that sign it said private property. But on the other side, it didn't say nothing, and that sign was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is our land, from California to New York Island, from the redwood forest to the ocean waters. This land was made for you and me.
Nobody living can ever stop me as I go walking my freedom highway. Nobody living can make me turn back. This land is made for you and me.
This land is your land, this land is our land, from California to New York Island, from the redwood forest to the ocean waters. This land was made for you and me.
During the next year, I will be there at least 5 times for someone else's fight, as well as my own. If enough of us are there, we'll all start winning.
And the great labor troubadour Cy Khan first performed this song.
Who owns the future? Who owns the earth? Who owns our labor? Who says what it's worth? Who owns our children? Who owns our lives? Who decides if we got justice? Justice, justice. We want justice, justice, justice. We want justice, justice. In wages, the right to organize. Safety conditions, we're fighting for our lives. Healthcare and pensions, that's what we mean when we say that we want jobs with justice. Justice, justice. We want jobs with justice. Justice, justice. We want jobs with justice. They want the people out there on this earth, hungry and homeless, looking for work. Young folks and old folks walking the streets. Don't they have the right to jobs with justice? Justice, justice. We want jobs with justice. Justice, justice. We want jobs with justice. Fighting for justice, you know how much I care. Wherever I'm needed, you know I'll be there. Today the future is here in our hands. Are you with me? Will you fight for justice? Justice, justice. We want jobs with justice. Justice, justice. We want jobs with justice. Justice, justice. We want jobs with justice.
Chavez, President of the United Farm Workers of America, came to Springfield to open a great boycott office at Western New England College. He was accompanied by his good friend and supporter, Father Brian Boland, pastor of St. Patrick's Church in South Hadley Falls. They died within a year of each other a few years later.
The water is polluted with pesticides. So is the air. And so is the ground. And so are the grapes that are coming to the market. We are boycotting to let the consumers know that while eating grapes is not going to kill you immediately, it has a cumulative effect. There is pesticide residue in the grapes, the same pesticides that is causing damage in the workers and their families. Boycott is a powerful tool, a non-violent tool. We are not boycotting to destroy those farms. We're just boycotting to get the farmers to come to the table and deal with those issues they must deal with. It's a boycott that can be called off at any time the grower comes and meets and deals with the issues on the basis of social justice. This is a moral issue because it deals with human beings and because it deals with justice.
De colores se visten los campos en la primavera. De colores son los pajaritos que vienen de afuera. De colores es el arco iris que vemos lucir. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí.
He had a 60-year career of activism, writing, publishing, establishing people's law, and civil disobedience. We lost Ward, a great mentor to Jobs with Justice and to so many others in Western Mass, last June 29th, at the age of 83. Ward was one of the organizers of the International Campaign for Justice in Bhopal in 1985, shortly after the 1984 Union Carbide chemical spill that killed more than 22,000 people. When Dow Chemical bought Union Carbide and did not clean up the lethal chemicals polluting Bhopal's ground and water, it only confirmed Ward's understanding that the core problem was finding a way to exert citizen control over corporations. In 1994, he co-founded POCLAD, the Program on Corporations, Law, and Democracy. On December 18, 2000, Ward appeared in the District of Columbia Superior Court to answer charges that he had engaged in an illegal demonstration in the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol on October 14th. Ward told the court,
40 years ago, I began my professional life working in India. There I came to appreciate the enormous power of nonviolent civil disobedience to advance constructive social change through the work of Mohandas Mahatma Gandhi, one of the leaders of the Indian freedom movement. In the early decades of the 20th century, in north of India as a celebrated case, Gandhi sought to help landless peasants claim their rights under British and Indian law. The local magistrate accused Gandhi of disturbing the peace and therefore violating the law. Gandhi's statement explaining his actions concluded, "I venture to make this statement not in any way an extenuation of the penalty to be awarded against me, but to show that I have disregarded the order served upon me, not for want of respect to local authority, but in obedience to a higher law, the law of our being, the voice of conscience." So it was in this spirit, Your Honor, that I disregarded the orders of the Capitol Police to cease political demonstrating in the rotunda of the Capitol. My conscience called upon me to demand that all Americans have the right to universal health care, that corporate money and all other forms of corporate influence be eliminated from the political process, just as it was in my home state of Wisconsin for a half century until 1953. Until this happens, the democratic society we all desire for in our country will remain an impossible dream. Therefore, Your Honor, I plead guilty in the service of democracy.
The judge accepted Ward's plea of guilty in the service of democracy, imposing only a mandatory payment of $50 to the District of Columbia Crime Victim Compensation Fund, rejecting the prosecutor's demand for a $100 fine.
Eric is a man who thinks he has the power, but we know that it can't last. Eric thinks he owns Northampton, Massachusetts, brought bargaining to an impasse. Contract! The profits just enrich this man. People all around, they say he's got it coming, 'cause he takes as much as he can.